overwhelming, and so I don't. Oh, thank you very much.
So you will only make the sign in, eh? Sign in. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Hello. Hello, you can hear me? Okay, let's get started. Uh, Let me start. I mean, he needs no introduction. We've been talking a lot, but
The last time somebody said he doesn't need an introduction, he added, so the less said about him, the better.
okay, there you go. Okay, I will start with his introduction, which will not be like what he's saying. In 1994, Gurcharan Das took early retirement from business to be a full-time writer. Three of his widely acclaimed books or the trilogy are based on the classical Indian goals of the ideal of life. In 2002, India Unbound was the first volume on Artha, the material well-being. The second, The Difficulty of Being Good, is on Dharma or the moral well-being. The third, Kama, the riddle of desire, recounts a tale of love and vulnerability. Gurcharan is also a management thinker, guru, is variously known as various names, business leader, former CEO of Procter and Gamble, India, and also in America, also worked in America, Mexico, and Europe. In short, he's a polymath. Today, we'll concentrate mostly on Guru Charan, the writer and the thinker. Uh, we'll also talk about his latest book, Another Sort of Freedom, a book I loved reading. Uh, it's a memoir and a personal favorite of mine of all the books he's written over the years. The book starts with his early childhood in Layalpur, which disappeared from history when Pakistan named it Faisalabad. And I personally know Faisalabad as a test cricket venue with a dead wicket where any batsman could plunder centuries. After partition, like tens of thousands of other Hindus, his family moved to India, first to Simla and then to Delhi. His family resettled in America when his father, a senior government engineer, was transferred there. When his father moved back to India, Gurcharan was left behind America to allow him to complete his school, high school. His mother, of course, was deeply worried that the boy would get astray, left alone in this strange land. And we'll talk about this. His book has tons and tons of his memories of his mother and father. Uh, her worries, of course, turned around to be ill-founded. He got into Harvard on a scholarship. His mother wanted him to pursue a career in engineering, just like his father. But Gurcharan then was taken in by the world of humanities, history, and philosophy. To his mother's horror, listen to this, who saw Harvard as a ticket to a comfortable upper middle class life, he ended up graduating as a major in philosophy and learning Sanskrit in the process. His mother was desperate to see him make a living, while his father, very different in taste and temperament, stressed that it was far more important to make a life. Welcome to Kalinga, Kathmandu, Gurcharan. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Uh, it's a pleasure to talk to you, of course. And when I finished reading this book, I told myself I'm talking to an 81-year-old. Or are you 80, sir?
Or an 8-year-old.
Okay. 80-year-old child, by his own admission. He started running tirelessly in pre-partition India, and he hasn't stopped since. He keeps running. So much so that he oftentimes runs into himself, which we'll explain later as we go into some fun Q&A. By the way, he's also our as in Nepal's Joy Sahab. Some of you probably discovered now, but many of us knew it earlier. So welcome once again. So as I said, we'll get into his book. Let's start with this, Gurcharan.
Can I suggest
Please.
something? Let's move up front because we'll be closer to the audience. Have you got a copy of the book?
No,
No, there is a copy over there that I'll
the
ask.
copy is in the book in my bag.
That's all
Come
right.
on.
No, I have another
You have a
bag
book?
here. Yeah. Can
Do
you
you
bring a
want-
copy of the book?
I'll go bag, masa.
Okay, now continue.
You say in your book, an autobiography is different from a memoir. How so?
Well, first, you called me a management guru. Let me tell the audience what I think such a management guru is. Guru stands for good at understanding, GU, but relatively useless, RU. That is what such a guru is. All right, now the difference between a memoir and an autobiography. An autobiography is a straightforward telling of your life. I was born here, I went to school here, I went to college, and I got a job, boringly on till the end. A memoir tries to connect the dots in your life, the life moments, and tries to create a pattern, find a pattern, so that in the end, you actually understand yourself. Now, which human being doesn't want to understand himself? And so, the other fact is that when you write a memoir, you have to relive your life.
Of course.
I have discovered that reliving your life is even better than living it. And
Wonderful.
why? Why? Because one, you can play God. You decide what experience you want to put in your pattern
And which
memoir.
characters come into your story?
Exactly. And so that's one thing. But also, it's important that we'll go on for like this for too long. You've got more questions to ask,
No, no,
but
go on,
I
go
will
on.
just no. But I'll just say out to all of you, I recommend all of you to write a memoir. One, to understand yourself, because when you're living your life, why reliving is better? Because when you're living your life, you're too busy. You got to catch a bus, you got to catch a train, you have to do this, you have to do that. There's no time to think, now there's a fan and it might drop on my head. You don't think of that.
No.
But in your memoir, you can be thinking of that. You see? So therefore, it's like a memory. A memory is superior to the event itself, the memory of an event.
Lovely. While reading this book, I was especially struck, the details you have and how vividly you remember. How is that possible? Because you are, sorry. While reading the book, I was especially struck that it has great details, including from his early childhood. And I was thinking, how is it possible?
Well, I was lucky. My mother went to a college in Lahore called Kinnaird College, and one of her teachers taught her to write a diary,
Oh,
and she followed that teacher. And so I appear on page 17 for the first time in her diary. And what does she say? This is a restless baby. 6 months later, I have become a difficult child. Another year later, she is calling me a troublemaker. And you're right, at the age of 3, I learned to run, and I've been running ever since.
beautifully. You're
And
running
and
beautifully.
and often running into myself. But
Lovely.
and then when I go to kindergarten, true to form, difficult child, troublemaker, I keep raising my hand, and the teacher says, Nahi, Nahi. They had given me the name Ashok Kumar. She says, it'll be easier if we just call you Nahi Kumar.
Lovely. So how did your name change from Ashok Kumar then?
Well, that's another story. They gave me the name Ashok Kumar, very nice name, Prince of Happiness. My grandmother suspected that my mother, her daughter-in-law, had given me that name because she thought my mother was secretly in love with a Bollywood actor named Ashok
Ashok
Kumar.
Kumar. Okay.
So this wasn't right. So she took me to her guru. She placed me at his feet, and she told the guru, Guruji enu na deo, give this boy a name. And since she had placed me at his feet, what came into his head was Gurcharan Das. So overnight, I was transformed at age of 4 from the Prince of Happiness, Ashok Kumar, to the humble servant of the feet of the Guru.
Lovely.
And many years later, I asked the Guru, why did you give me that name? Ashok Kumar was such a nice name. And he said, it's humility is a good thing for all of us to confront once in a while. And then he gave me the very best definition of humility I have ever heard. He said, in fact, he said to take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. And so I have dedicated this book. Let me tell you. Just hold this.
Yeah.
This is the book. And
Yeah.
I have dedicated the book to the happy few who don't take themselves too seriously. And that actually also explains the explanation for what is the title of this book, Another Sort of Freedom. That if you can learn to not take yourself seriously, you have achieved another sort of freedom, which is another way of interpreting the fourth Purushartha of moksha.
Uh, if you read this book, and I don't know whether some of you have already, there are some late motifs that keep on repeating in the book. One is the light, the lightness of being. It's beautiful. The book is beautiful in the sense that there are a lot of anecdotes about his family interspersed with deep introspection. The lightness of being, we struggle and take oftentimes, as he says, take ourselves very seriously. Uh, but there are also several other leitmotifs will come into. One thing, it must have been hard, the partisan, because you are pre-partisan child.
Yeah, I
At
mean,
the,
that was the big, terrible, I think the most tragic event that happened on the subcontinent in the last 100 years. But let me begin to explain what happened. Let me begin in the same kindergarten class. It's same year, 1947, and it is February, January of 1947. I'm 5 years old. We all have a pencil box. You know those two Anna pencil boxes that we used to have, two pencils, one rubber. But the boy next to me, his name is Ayan. He's a Muslim boy. He's a poor Muslim boy. He has no pencil box. And he's always borrowing my pencils, and I don't like it. But the boy ahead of me, who sits in front, he has two pencil boxes. And one of them is made in England, shiny red. So at recess, one day, I switched pencil boxes. I take one of the pencil boxes from the rich kid's desk and put it on the poor kid's desk. I suppose to achieve some sort of harmony of, of equality in class. I don't know exactly what my motives were, but there I was. And after the class is over, after the recess was over, everybody came back and the rich kid screamed, "Who stole my pencil box?" Because the rich kid was a rich kid he's the only one who came to school in a car. We all walked to school. The teacher got worried, and so she made us all stand, and we all had to go around and give a list.
Mhm.
And when it came Iron's turn, Iron said, "Yes, there is a pencil box on my desk, but it's not mine, and I didn't steal it." So now came my turn, and I was frozen. This was my chance. Nobody believed what Iron had said. So this was my chance to tell the truth. But I was frozen. I kept quiet. And Iron was led in front of the class and he was punished. And till today, I have nightmares of this incident, which I did not understand. And call it the difficulty of being good or what. But I think of it as a temporary insanity when a human being confronts the absurd
Yes.
in life. I thought I was doing some good, but I ended up doing some bad. Got this poor kid punished. Then in August 1947, same year, is the partition. We are in Lahore. Lahore has been declared to be part of Pakistan. And immediately the Hindus start running away. And there are already Muslim in every neighborhood. They have these neighboring armies who are attacking the Hindus. And luckily, we escaped. And then we escaped and now we are waiting at the platform of the train. The, at those days, trains are not observing any timings, so we have been waiting for an hour or two on the in the in the compartment. And there's a policeman, tall, handsome policeman, who's guarding the platform.
Mhm.
And I look out the window and I see two sick boys, teenagers, with their kirpans, and they come from behind and kill him, and the man falls to the ground. He's a Muslim. He falls to the ground, and the rest of the scene is covered with blood. My mother shuts the window. I'd ask her what happened, and she cannot explain. But as we think about the partition, I think of it as a same temporary insanity that happened between me and Ayan
Mhm.
a few months earlier, happening in a big way in a state of Punjab where the whole state went temporarily insane. And you again hit the, I get reminded of the modern idea of the absurd, because there's no reason to explain that people who had lived together for hundreds of years started killing each other. And so that was my truck with the partition.
Lovely. Lovely in the sense, well explained. Of course, it was horrendous partisan. In your lectures and this book in particular, there's this late motif I kept on encountering.
Yeah, you got to
Making
your
Hello.
yeah,
Okay.
speak
In
into.
your lectures in this book, I kept on encountering another late motif that constantly comes up, making a life. Can you explain to the audience what making a life means in this
Okay, to
context?
explain that, we'll go back to that kindergarten. Now I've finished school. It's the month of May,
Mhm.
and I'm carrying a report card, running to the house. My mother's waiting at the door, and she sees me happy, and she says, "Did you stand first?" And my father is nearby behind her, and he tells her, "That is the wrong question. Ask him what he likes about school. Does he like to draw? Does he like to does he like stories, poems? Who are his friends?" Basically, my father is telling her, my mother is that this is where the two light motives come. One, my mother's concern about making a living. You have to work hard, come first in class, and only then will you get a good job. And my father, more concerned with making a life. And so this particular pattern runs right through my life.
Yes. You write through the book, and then, yes, at the various stages of your life, I can see your constant struggle to come to terms with either of these. And, you know, before we move there, I also want to talk about this interim phase. Then your father gets transferred to a
Washington.
government job in Washington, and the family goes along with him. And you go to high school in Washington, somewhere.
Right.
Yes. And you encounter racism in America.
Yeah. So I'm 13.
Yes. Talk us through that experience.
I'm 13 years old, and I've just entered an American high school. My mother discovers that I'm way ahead of my class. And so she goes to the principal and she says to him, give him a test and then decide which class you should put him in, because he's way ahead of
Sure.
what this. And the principal looks at the color of my skin, and he's obviously an old Virginia redneck, a racist type. And he says, welcome to the American dream, son. In our country, colored boys are not supposed to get too big for their boots. So you stay out of trouble and you graduate with a diploma. And there are lots of factories opening up around here in Virginia and Maryland. And you'll get a good factory job. Welcome to the American dream. My mother is horrified at this. This is before the civil rights movement. We're talking about 1955. Eisenhower was the president. And but my father has a different reaction.
Mhm.
My father says to both of us that, I'm glad that you've confronted American racism, because racism in America is like the caste system in India. It's prejudice. And because we were Punjabis, and Punjabis had a lot of Sikhs, Muslims, other sort of spiritual sects. So the old Sanatan Dharma did not have a very big, I mean, in fact, Brahmins in Punjab were considered low. They came like servants to do puja and all that, not given the high status that Brahmins get everywhere else. Anyway, so it was a lesson for me from my father. But the the um, the happy side of this happened because 3 months later there was a birthday party. One of the girls in my class, she had liberal parents, and they invited black kids and white kids to the birthday party.
Mhm.
And after lots of eats, we sat down around on the floor and we played a game called Spin the Bottle. I don't know if any of you know the game, but basically the idea is that one person spins the bottle, and where the mouth of the bottle points to when it stops, you can kiss the person
Adjacent.
of facing the bottle. And but the unwritten rule in this game of that evening was that black boys kissed only black girls and white boys only kissed white girls. So when it came my turn, everybody got confused. What's he going to do? So I solved the problem instantly. I kissed everyone. I kissed black girls. I kissed white girls. I kept getting bonus turns because I was kissing so much that I had the whale of my time and whale of life. But
Lovely. Go
then,
on.
really, I had my revenge against this principle because I graduated at the top of my class and I got scholarships to Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. And he had forgotten the advice that he had given me by then, but he invited me to his room. He was reading the Washington Post of May something, something, 1959, May 1959, when I graduated. And and he says, well, no kid has got scholarships to all three. So you have made our school proud. And I was tempted to remind, and he said, welcome to the American dream again.
Okay.
So I was tempted to remind him at this point about a different American dream that he had for me 4 years earlier. But I was too gentlemanly to do that. And we left it at that.
Lovely. So at Harvard, I mean, you obviously were bright and you finally chose Harvard over Princeton and Yale. And you chose philosophy. You ultimately graduated as a philosophy major. To your mom's utter horror, who saw your Harvard as a ticket to comfortable upper middle class life.
Correct. And so I'm going to tell you the next scene occurs that summer of 1959. I've chosen Harvard. I'm back home. and I'm about to take a flight at Palam Airport. Air India flight is waiting. My mother's got tears in her eyes, and she's saying between those tears, now study something useful. Be like your father. Be an engineer. Engineers will always get jobs in India. So dutifully, I arrive at Harvard and I write engineering as my major. But I have a roommate, and my roommate is studying Russian history. And he's reading the novel Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. And so one day at lunch, he's so taken up by the book that he says to me, he says, Gurcharan, one day, if you're going to have an affair with a married woman, it should be someone like Anna Karenina. And then he starts describing all the virtues of this beautiful woman. And I'm thinking, what's this going on? Here I am mugging up Bernoulli's equation and calculating pipe friction, and this guy is dreaming of sleeping with Anna Karenina. Something is wrong. And so promptly in the next semester, I change my major.
Yeah.
I say, fortunately, you don't have to declare anything at that point. You only till your junior year. That's the luxury of an American undergraduate education. And so what do I study? I studied in the next 2 years Greek tragedy, Roman history, history of capitalism. I study political science, um, and I mean geopolitics, and I study Renaissance painting, Bauhaus architecture. I even take a course in Sanskrit called Sanskrit Love Poetry. And when my mother hears that her son is studying Sanskrit at Harvard, she says, Hi, hi, mera munda. A dead language, now only the dead will give him a job.
Okay.
But
Well,
I do finish off. I finish
yeah,
in
yeah.
philosophy, and then I got a scholarship to go to Oxford.
Yes. Let me also, I've been given indication by the organizer to hurry up
Okay.
because we started late. We'll just keep
No, we must get
keep
our
it.
45 minutes.
we are we are getting 45 minutes. Okay. Then you then left a promising academic career because you obviously dabbled and ended up doing quite well though.
Yeah.
And going from IB covered halls at Harvard to sell Vicks, there was a huge career switch for you
Yeah.
because I can sense in your writing that you missed intellectual world at Harvard and the West.
That's true. So I did finish in philosophy. I got a scholarship to Oxford to do a PhD. And as I'm waiting to go to Oxford, I asked myself one day in the evening, do I really want to spend the rest of my life at that stratosphere of abstract thought? No. I want a life of action, I say. And so quietly, I write off to Oxford that I'm not coming. And my mother's worst nightmare has come true. She has a grown up son, educated, but doing nothing. What we in Punjabi call vela. He's vela at home.
Yeah.
And we have a nosy neighbor who comes and visits my mother in the morning. And she says to my mother, Thoda munda ki kar raha hai? What's your son doing? And she gets so embarrassed, she doesn't know what to say. And I see the embarrassment on her face. And I said, no, this is wrong. So I'll start looking at the newspapers for any wanted advertisement. And I apply to a company that makes Vicks Vapor Rub. And they hire me. And that's how I end up in the business world. So as you said,
Yeah.
from the ivy covered halls at Harvard,
Yes.
carrying
Selling Vicks
selling
in dusty
Vicks.
Indian bazaars. Okay. Lovely. So you also had this interesting time while you were serious marketers 5 days a week. You would write during the weekends,
Right. And that's so I missed the intellectual life.
obviously.
And so then my father says, you can make a life on the weekend. And so one week, Sunday, I sit down to write a play. And I tell myself, to give myself confidence, it must be a day like this, a morning like this, when Shakespeare too sat down to write Hamlet. Now, no sensible person says that, but I did. And so I wrote a play. And it won a prize, it did well. And I wrote three plays, and one of got performed off Broadway, another one at Edinburgh Festival. So I got the confidence. And then I wrote a novel in my 30s. So by the time I get to the 40s, I begin to ask myself the question. And I'm now, I've become head of the company, and the company is Procter and Gamble.
Super.
And and there are a lot of good brands Procter and Gamble has got. But I ask myself, is this what life is all about? And so it's a discontent, an ennui, which then one day I come home and tell my wife, Bunu,
Yes.
that I feel I should quit. And she says, but you mean our salary check will stop? Uh, and so and she says, you're going to give up a promising career which is taking you to the top of this company. This is at headquarters, when I was at the American headquarters, to start to become a starving writer. So I had to sit down with today you'd call it an Excel sheet, but I had to work out how much savings we had, what our expenses will be, what our income would be. And she was a good sport finally, and she understood, and so we came back.
So why couldn't you do both? You instead of and break the South Asian stereotype. The writers have to be hungry, lean. Why couldn't you do both?
Well, because frankly, it was time. If I wanted to be a serious writer, it had to be a full-time job, not a part-time job.
Okay.
But luckily, because of 25 years of writing on the weekends, I had the confidence plus the ability to be able to do it.
Lovely. So you've had some very
She's getting very nervous behind you.
We'll wrap up a few things. So you've had some.
The best is yet to come, my dear.
Yeah, wait until that. So you then subsequently had very good books that I mentioned earlier. But tell us more about this secret sauce of another sort of freedom. The book in question, Another Sort of Freedom. What is the secret sauce?
Well, this is, this is the fourth in the series, as he explained, that I had written Artha, Dharma, Kama, Moksha. This is the Purusharthas. Only I have given them a 20th, 21st century spin to this ideal, interpreted them in a secular, non-spiritual, non-transcendental way.
Mhm.
And the freedom, as I've explained to you, is freedom from yourself. Whether you become a yogi or a guru or whatever, but the reality ultimately is the desire of all human beings. What we are stuck with is problems like the desire to want to be somebody and not a nobody. And so this excessive self-absorption, you want premium treatment all the time. You want to be in business class, not at the back, sitting at the back of the
Yeah.
plane. It's a normal human thing.
So
That's the
lovely.
other sort of
So
freedom.
once you came to this side as a writer, then you also have this expression now. You increasingly felt that the business people are nicer than the writers. Why do you say that?
Well, since I've been in business for 30 years and as a writer for 30 years, I have concluded that yes, I feel business people are nicer people than writers, artists, academics, all these uh, so called intellectuals. And what is the reason for that? The reason is that a business person needs other people. First, he has to have a customer. You have to satisfy your customer. Then he has suppliers. You have to be fair to your suppliers. Everybody wants to squeeze the supplier too hard. You'll get hurt with a poor component. Then you have employees. You have to be fair, respectful to your employees, otherwise they leave you. Join. And so a businessman, after all, what is morality? What is dharma? It's to be aware of the other person. That's the central idea of dharma, of morality. And a business people depends on others. So, the writer like me, 6 to 12 o'clock in the morning for the last 30 years, I'm sitting in a bubble, not aware that there are other human beings on the earth. I don't do email, I don't do anything except write. So that is the point. I think that's why I feel disillusioned, disappointed, because I'd hoped to become a better human being when I became a writer. And this is what explains why Bombay people are nicer than Delhi people. Although the best thing that's happened to Delhi is Gurgaon, a business center has opened up. So the children of these arrogant Delhi 3 types now look down on their parents and look up to the CEOs in Gurgaon.
Okay, Gurcharan, 30 years in business, 30 years as a writer. Do you worry that life is passing you by?
Well, this is the other irony that, yes, there was, I feel, the way Seneca, the Roman poet, playwright, the leading intellectual of the Roman Empire, and advisor to the emperor, Seneca, he says, while I was busy, life passed me by. So I was intrigued by that because I felt the same way. And I said that here was the leading intellectual of the Roman Empire, the man who was advisor to the emperor. Emperor was incompetent, so he was really running the empire. The Roman Empire was the world at that time. And then he has an affair with the emperor's wife,
Yes.
and then he has to run because now the soldiers are after him. If he had, what does he mean by life? If here's a guy who really lived his life, and for him to say life passed me by, I don't understand, but I feel like him.
Okay, lovely. So one last question then. I mean, I couldn't help asking you this. We've been following Indian politics, let's say, Indian evolution over the years. You are also one of the early market gurus, and the Modi government came 2013, 14. For the first time, these elections in 2024, the Modi government now relies on coalition partners to stay in office. So tell us, zoom out from that zooming in, zoom out and tell us what is the story of current day India?
Well, actually, I've written another book, so it's a commercial break for a second. It's called The Dilemma of the Indian Liberal. In fact, it's in here.
Yes.
You can pull it out.
Yes.
It's a long essay, and it's flying off the shelves, by the way, in India. And essentially, the question that he's asked me is that I'm a classical liberal. I won't tell you the story of how it happened. That might take us too long.
In short,
In short, it's a story. I worked for Vicks Vapor Rub. Remember, I joined that company. 1 year there was a flu, and we produced a lot of Vicks that year. And when we are celebrating at the end of the year, our record sales, we get a summons from Delhi that we have broken the law. And the law that we have broken is the licensing law, which says you can produce only so many tons of Vicks in a year. And if you break that law, 3 years jail sentence
Yes.
was there. And so I was hauled up, summoned to Delhi, and I was treated like a criminal. The joint secretary um, says to me, um looking at the summons, you've broken the law. So I explained to him that I thought we were doing good. We, millions of people during this epidemic were brought relief by this. We ran our factory 3 shifts and we kept the pharmacies and chemist shops stocked with Vicks and we did good. But he says, you broke the law. And I said, yes, technically that's true. He said, what do you mean technically? It's in the license. You broke the law. And now he says, I want to make an example of your company, you bloody multinationals. You think you can get away with murder because we are a poor country? We also have laws. You have to abide by our laws. So I want to make an example of your company. Now the law will take its own course. And so he says, Jao, and throws us out of his office. At the door, I turn around and I say, sir, we are a multinational company. The news will get out in the world. New York Times, Washington Post, everywhere. And and they will explain what happened. It's not every day that an executive of multinational company goes to jail. And so he says, are you threatening me? I said, no, the news will get out. Anyway, he throws us out of his office. And the point I was making to him is, what will they think of our country, the world, of our laws, of our prime minister, and persons like you who have to administer these laws? How will you look in the eyes of the world? That's what got him upset. And that's where the lawyers who were accompanying me said, you idiot, after I came out, you should have fallen at his feet and begged for mercy. Now you better be prepared to go to jail. Anyway, the government, in its wise sense, dropped the inquiry. I didn't go to jail, but I changed from being a Congress supporter to joining the Swatantra Party. And only we had to
Swatantra
wait till
Party. Did you hear that?
1991. This was during Indira Gandhi's time in the
It's
70s.
okay. So, on that note, we need to continue this story and we need to have you again in 2025, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gurcharan.
Just a minute. Thank you very much. We want to hear more about it, but we have a time limitation. While I was hearing this wonderful conversation, I got to realize that how important it is to raise the question. I'll keep that in my mind, so I'll try to be a writer. Anyway, we can you fix this? Fix this, and I like to call Sarita Tiwari Didi to appreciate the guest with the letters of appreciation. Uh, at the same time, I'd like to request our volunteer friends to fix the stage, please. ताली चाहिँ बजाइदिनु होला. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. We moving forward. We have another wonderful session. This